Hello and welcome to RCM Tech Talk. I'm John Williamson, joined as always by Francis Burton. We're excited to talk to you guys today about one of the most annoying issues, duplicate claims. And there's good duplicate claims and bad duplicate claims, and we're going to get into the weeds of that. Francis, you've got a lot of experience with this. Tell us what you're thinking.
Well, duplicate claims, yes. To me, it's almost like telling you, hey, start over. You're back at square one. It means nothing, right? Now, there's the confessions of, yeah, we know it's a duplicate because we did mass refiles, whatever. But, it is like starting over. And you wish they would at least go to the extent of saying duplicate claim because original denial said this, or because it's still in process. They should tell us, but no, they don't. So you are back to square one.
Well, let's dig into the details. So, Francis, as we've been talking, you were already telling me about one of the issues you're seeing just recently, and you mentioned you get these all the time. This is a notice from a clearinghouse. I'm sure everyone is familiar with this. What's this one specifically?
Well, apparently this is for a single date. Claims from April 17th. Now, I see these at least once a week, maybe twice a week. Ever since the Change Healthcare debacle, I think I've been getting 3 a week. But it's basically telling you, hey, sorry, right? You need to refile if you want to overcome this recent glitch that we had to fix, or it could be on the payer side, it could be on the clearinghouse side, what have you. But again, right here it says strongly recommend that clients review their claims and resubmit. They put resubmitted, but resubmit any from April 17th that have not been received by the payer. Now we'll get into, when we look at the slides, about why people refile claims. But this is going to come back to be referenced when I talk about reasons why people have to do refiles blindly, because the department that's not reading these emails, honestly, I don't think a lot of people share emails that come in like this. It may be going to only the RCM director or 2 people on an entire team. So that's another thing that people aren't communicated, or the communication isn't relayed. So they're over here scrambling to get claims worked.
Well, let's talk about some of those scenarios where, they're the duplicate on purpose because the clearinghouse didn't get it, and these kinds of weird scenarios of getting the claim out the door. But once we actually assume we actually did get the claim to the payer, let's talk about some of the payer duplicate claim denial scenarios. So, Francis, sort of break apart for us sort of what are true duplicates, what are false, and some of the others that we don't really know about.
Well, looking at this slide, we're going to just talk high level, and then I'll tell you a little bit more. But yes, it's either really a duplicate and we know it, or it's really a duplicate but we didn't know it. And then you have it's not a duplicate for sure. The true duplicates where we had to do a mass refile, whether it was for April 17th or for the first quarter of the year because there was a system upgrade and a bunch of things went wrong, or a provider MPI number was wrong, so you mass refiled all of his. So there's that situation. An example of it's not really a duplicate is where you have the missing modifiers. Actually, I think the next slide will kind of go into it a little bit better. You want to switch to that? Okay. So you've got where we didn't get a denial. We didn't get a payment. We didn't get a notice of claim in process. We didn't get a notice of actually we are requesting medical records. Now I say these things, but sometimes it is sitting in your office. There's this whole thing of whether or not it's in queue, whether it's an electronic queue or somewhere on somebody's desk trying to make it to you queue. There's that piece. And John, I don't know if you want to speak to some of the things we've discussed about that.
Yeah, this is so frustrating because it's the case of multiple queues. So whether they request additional information and that request comes in the mail, and we all know how long it takes to get mail opened and sorted and connected to the right account, and then that right account updated. A bumbling process on the front end that ultimately and causes the AR rep a bunch of extra work because they are either A, thinking, I got to make a phone call to follow up on this claim because I have no response, but they technically did, or they decide, well, maybe the payer, it didn't really process this claim. It kind of fell into the payer black hole. I'll submit another version of the claim, not a corrected claim. And it actually is a duplicate claim, but you're sort of doing it as an AR rep without actually realizing that you're creating this new problem. So now you've got two problems. You've got the additional information requested sitting in someone else's queue you didn't know about, and you've resubmitted the claim as a duplicate because you didn't realize what was going on and you thought it had fallen into the black hole. So this sort of triage of multiple queues, it doesn't just affect duplicates, it affects a lot of things. There's a lot of extra work created for the AR rep, which sometimes they then take this action, which isn't the optimal next action, and creates even more work. So sort of a domino effect of cascading problems here.
Yeah, and I kind of want to go on a tangent a little bit, John, to talk about the mail routing, right? There's a whole lot that comes in by mail. I know we talk all the time about 835s and electronic. That's one way of managing things because at least it's right there on your screen. The snail mail. I had a client group where Mondays are the worst for every group, but this group for sure got the mailman would bring in a bin stacks of mail. This person would sit there and rip them open one at a time, take them out, put them in a stack, maybe paper clip, multiple things together, which, by the way, tend to slide off and then things really get misshuffled. But she would open and stack, open and stack. I asked her, I know this isn't about a time study podcast, but I said, why do you not sort them before you open them? You can clearly identify that the anthems that have this return address look to it, and it looks like this through the window. Let's, I didn't have time for that, right? Let's get you moving. Before we talked about how to sort better, we actually purchased a $200 envelope opener. So on Mondays, she just shoved them through that thing, sliced them. There they went. And then you can kind of sort by, hey, these have checks in them. I know because I've sorted mail for a year now. These go to utilization review. These I can tell are the ones that Anthem says if you open it up, and you can tell how thick it is, it's for additional information requests. This is refund request. So, the whole idea of routing things more efficiently, it kind of starts there when it's the non-electronic way of doing things. And yeah, I think that will get it to the right departments quicker. It doesn't set from the opener to the next station to the next station. 3-4 days go by and you're still trying to figure out what's happened to the claims that are actually in process. There's
Yeah.
another piece to that, but go ahead on your thoughts, John.
Well, I wanted so this scenario among several others where one person who's not the AR rep handling the account becomes aware of sort of additional material about the account means that the AR rep sitting there not knowing this account. I actually know what to do next if I had all the information in front of me. And so the other thing I see is that it sort of breeds a culture of we'll wait and see. So because if the AR rep is aggressive, they made the extra phone call that was pointless. They submitted the duplicate claim that was pointless. They took a follow-up action that was not the right follow-up action. So a complete waste of time. The worst case is they submit the duplicate claim because then they create another problem. But that's one strategy for the aggressive AR approach. These sort of then, because you're going to get your hand slapped multiple times for, oh, why'd you do that? I had the thing over here. If you just waited till next week, you would have seen it. It sort of breeds the scenario of, well, let me just hold back another 30 days to see what happens. Because I know that, Bob over there opening mail is slow. I know that Susan over there, is getting information requests and she didn't update the account most likely. So I'll just give it another 30 days before I think about it. And so you sort of get this snowball effect of nobody wants to do things fast and therefore everything slows down, which is, a secondary sort of reason that these things need to be moved along quickly. And one of the outcomes of not doing that is submitting a duplicate claim.
Mm-hmm. And two things about the information that comes in and makes it to the next workstation and the next person. The paper ones, they either get scanned and attached to a patient record, and then the AR team can kind of work it from the scanned version, or somebody's taking that stack and keying in, okay, these are the ones that are all still in process, or additional records are, it's probably in the medical record manager's room where she's in charge of getting all the records attached to the claim. But guilty over here, I used to look at the stacks of pending. We've received your claim, they're pending, in process. I didn't have my team do anything with those because they're struggling to keep up. It's like, oh, they're pending. That's good. But if somebody doesn't go in and make a note, these are all pending, you do have somebody in the other end of the building going, oh, I guess I need to refile or call, right? So again, it's synchronizing your team that's very difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of these other scenarios, maybe we cover, where payments were made, these kinds of things, and sort of the other scenarios that we haven't talked about here.
Yeah. But the only thing I'll say about the mass refile is sometimes you just do what you got to do. Get the spaghetti to stick on the wall and hope for the best. But there are situations where you have corrected claims. I see that a lot. Corrected claims where uh, whoever is new or just carelessness didn't attach the code 7 to indicate it is a corrected claim. That's a real common one for why denials for duplicate come through.
Yeah.
The other one was not even on the slide, relates to more of a home health situation where encounters are created by two different departments, whether it's the RN that's done her visit, PT, but you've got one encounter that's already started, and it's in that time range. The claim goes out, another one comes through for physical therapy, still in that same episode period. Those will get denied as duplicate. Now I know efficient teams have a way of working to catch those by merging the invoices together, but that is an extra step. It needs to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and so once we get a duplicate claim, sort of let's talk a little bit more about resolution. So there's the triage step of, was it a true duplicate, and I can essentially ignore it as long as an 835 comes, or the other scenario where I made a mistake. They didn't do the resubmission with the frequency code in there, or I forgot the ICN number, whatever it might be. Or it's maybe another situation where they actually do need to make a phone call to clarify something. So maybe at the end of the day, sometimes you got to make a phone call, and it's in order to sort of unclog the wheel. Because if you've submitted it, if the payer thinks the duplicate claim has been submitted and then you do something else, it may still be essentially locked. So even though you took the sort of second time around, you took the appropriate next action, you may have locked it up so that they're not going to do anything until a rep signs off on it. So that phone call may be necessary when it really should have been processed and it's been flagged as duplicate. So this is where you've created a lot of extra work for the AR rep. Sometimes they created it themselves by not, right hand not knowing what the left hand did, but they're going to have to deal with it, and that may involve a phone call to discuss it. Hopefully they're taking the good strategies. We talk about this elsewhere of when you make a phone call on multiple claims, these types of things. So hopefully they're doing that, but sometimes you got to do that to unclog this.
Mm-hmm. A strategy I used back in my day is kind of find the similarities. We would have a case where um, education on modifier. This modifier isn't being used for this CPT code. Let's go back and mass refile, all the code, all the ones for this code that needed a modifier attached, and get it back out the door. So you have a cluster by a particular reason, and then you can kind of identify, should we refile from this date range to this date range, because we're noticing that's the bulk of unresponded to claims. It could have
Mhm.
been because of a an issue that there was an email sent out about that you never knew about. So, but you can tell from January 12th to January 29th, dates of service, there's a whole lot still hanging out there. Those are legitimate reasons to just mass refile, because
Yeah.
something's definitely wrong across the board. So there's tactical ways to decide um, how to selectively mass refile, and then what to
Yeah.
do about the exceptions, right? The ones that still.
In the mass refile space, so one of the things that, if you are sending a replacement claim, there's another frequency code for replacement claim. So if you really do need to, you don't have a response yet for whatever reason, maybe it's only been a few days, or maybe something happened, in a specific month or a specific week, and you're going to submit a new claim, but you don't want to get flagged as duplicate, and you want to have a replacement. That also can sort of, jiggle the handle, so to speak, within the payer's adjudication system, but avoid the scenario of actually filing a duplicate claim. So that replacement code could be used in those scenarios.
Right, right. I think a lot of times we create more work for ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
because we haven't really figured out how to synchronize everything. But you're doing the best you can just to kind of survive the day. And that's why I believe teams need to come together. I know we've talked about this in a different podcast, to meet more frequently, briefly, but more frequently, so you can kind of fine tune what you don't want one department working follow ups for something that's in that 90 and over, while somebody else is going 90 and over. Let's mass refile, you know. So two teams are
Yeah.
working against each other.
Well, and I think when you're not coordinating and communicating frequently, you have these sort of fat finger responses of, well, just jam the button on anything that's over 60 days old, without insight. So you can't be precise. So in order to be precise, you've got to have sort of continuous flow of information more in real time. And this, we've talked about it separately, but kind of almost adopting that Scrum process, meeting on a daily basis, making sure that work is handed off between parties more regularly, can avoid this. Even if you don't make big technological changes, you can still get around bad habits by having the frequency of communication, so you can avoid some of this stuff, the accidental duplicates. Well, this has been a
Yeah,
great episode. Yeah, please
let
go
me
ahead.
add something, John, real quick. I
Yeah.
have to do this. It's kind of like the train leaving the caboose behind, because as far as teams go, you need to stop and ask yourself, is there a bunch of things sitting in somebody's drawer that has been out for maternity leave? You know, I have gone into practices where there are checks sitting in a drawer, or EOBs that haven't been posted yet, and she's not going to be back for 2 more weeks. Those kind of things. So be mindful of where your people are at any given time,
Yeah.
if they're not going to be back for a while.
Yeah, this always turns into a workflow and people problem at the end of the day. It's, we can blame it on other things, but those are the areas. Uh, well, this has been great. So good discussion, duplicate claims, more denial strategies for revenue cycle directors who are trying to turn the corner on sort of in a messy operating world, or fine tune an operation that's sort of getting their wheels on underneath it and getting their legs underneath it, I should say. Well, thank you, Francis. This has been a lot of fun.
Sure. Thank you.
Bye bye.